Hey everyone, Clay from Brooklyn Football with the Fellas. It's all about Big Blue. Here to talk about the recently concluded Senior Bowl. I did one a little while ago on the Shrine Bowl, and I'd like to talk now about the Senior Bowl. And on behalf of both of them, I'm wearing the jersey of perhaps the greatest Giant of all time, perhaps the greatest defensive player of all time, and a person who played in both games. He played in the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl. So to wrap up this week of looking back on those two games, I figured I'd give a shout out to none other than LT Lawrence Taylor. And if you didn't know who Lawrence Taylor was, you're probably watching the wrong show. Okay, so I am going to talk a little bit about the people who I thought had good weeks and or a game at the Senior Bowl. Some players had better practice sessions than the game. Some players had better game than the practice sessions. We're going to take a look at all of them. So this is by no means a comprehensive list. This is just the people who definitely stood out and jumped out and caught my eye. So interior defensive linemen, we definitely need at least one, I'd say two of those. Savion Jones from LSU, who looked okay during the week, looked very good in the game, especially on that first drive when he was lined up right opposite Gray Zabel, who I'm also a fan of and also had a good week. And he kind of dominated Gray Zabel for a few plays there in that first drive. So I got to give props to Savion Jones. He's probably going to play either 3-tech or 5-tech. He's not a huge man for interior defensive line. He's like 300 pounds-ish, but that's not bad. And they say he runs under 4.840. So we'll see that at the combine. But if you get a man who's 290 and running a 4.740, I feel like that's a pretty solid defensive end stat. Obviously, he's got to be able to play the game, but he looked like he could play the game, and he could be a good run stuffer as well as an occasional pass rusher, and that's what we need. Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, who's probably higher up on most people's draft boards, is another person who looked good. So did Darius Alexander, who probably isn't very high up yet on a lot of draft boards, but is moving up out of Toledo. Donovan Ezaraku from Boston College also had a good week. Looked really hard to block in the one-on-one drills, as did Darius Alexander. Darius Alexander also got some good push in the game and made some stops against the run as well. Walter Nolan, who's a name that's high up on a lot of people's lists, he was a solid player this week. I didn't think he was as good as a lot of people have been talking about him. They talk him up like he's a definite first-round pick. I'm not sure that's who he is, but wouldn't mind having him. Joshua Farmer from Florida State and Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee also flashed fairly often during the practice week. A player who as a defensive end who had a rough start to the week, but then got better as the week went on and had a very good game was Landon Jackson. Landon Jackson is somebody I've been up and down with during the season. Earlier in the season, he looked like dominant. I thought he was going to be like an amazing defensive end. And then he ran into some couple of difficult games. And much like the Senior Bowl week, he started the week in the one-on-one drills, didn't look like he had a pass rush plan. He just didn't look like a dominant pass rush defensive end. And frankly, that's not who he is. But then as the week progressed and you got to see him do more things in full 11-on-11 settings, you could see that he's a very good run stuffing defensive end, sets the edge very well. And then by the time the game came up, he seemed to have figured out a couple of pass rush moves because he even had a strip sack in the game. He was looking more like the two-way defensive end I was hoping he would be. And I'm back in on Landon Jackson. I'd say if at pick number 34, we pick Landon Jackson, like if we got, especially if we got Cam Ward in the first round, I wouldn't be mad at all. That's a very solid pick right there. Femi Oladejo, I believe, from UCLA is how you say his name, also looked very good in the one-on-ones, looked good in the pass rush. Looks like somebody who, again, if you're looking for a defensive end, you could do worse than Femi Oladejo. Of course, outside linebacker / edge rusher, who to me is a different position than defensive end. Mike Green had the highlight play of the week. He just exploded into the chest of Connolly from Oregon and knocked him backwards onto his butt. But even besides that, was beating people off the edge, showed a wide variety of moves, beat somebody with a spin move. Like he just really looked like his pass rush plan and package was elite. And coming out of Marshall, he needed to prove himself because obviously that's not, a D1 powerhouse. And he did just that. So his stock, I'm sure, is high on the rise. He will probably go in the top 20. As far as cornerbacks, I'm going to try to say his name. I want to say Azare Thomas from Florida State looked good. That was a good looking cornerback. Not someone I take in the first round, but someone who I think if he lasts in the second round might be worth the value. He looked like a solid cornerback. Getting to the offensive line, Gray Zabel's the guy I've been talking about. He is who I thought Wyatt Millum was. Is a nice way of saying that. Going into the Senior Bowl week, I had Wyatt Millum as my first highest ranked offensive lineman in this draft, and I was wrong. He's a solid offensive lineman. He's a solid option, but he's not all that. I'm not saying that Gray Zabel is necessarily the best offensive lineman in the country, but I say he's a very solid, very good offensive lineman and plays all 5 positions, which is extremely valuable. So he's another one that if he somehow fell to 34 to the second round, and I'll pick 34, I wouldn't be at all disappointed if we were to pick him. In fact, I'd even consider trading up into the back end of the late first round to get him if we had already gotten, say, Cam Ward at number 3, and we then were able to move up and get someone to protect him. Again, it depends what we do in the free agency. If we've already signed a couple of, if we signed Trey Smith and Drew Dahlman, then it's not as important that we move up for Gray Zabel. But if we haven't done that and we still need at least one really good addition to our offensive line, Gray Zabel would be the guy I pick. In addition to him, another guy whose name I'm not entirely sure how to say, I want to say Arante Ursary from Minnesota, looked solid at tackle. Marcus Bowe, the M is silent in his last name, Marcus Bowe from Purdue, looked solid. He actually looked better in the actual Senior Bowl game. He was actually lined up right next to Gray Zabel at right tackle to Gray Zabel's right guard, and they looked very good on combo blocks, climbing to the second level. Even when Savion Jones beat Gray Zabel on a couple of plays, Bowe was taking care of business on his man. So Bowe looked pretty good, looked like a solid option. And I wouldn't mind him in a late round addition just to see if he could be someone to add some depth to our porous offensive line. Inside linebacker Jeffrey Vasa from Oregon was all over the field, making tackles, making hits, just getting in the way. Looked like getting in the way in a good way. Looked like a good mid-round pick for inside linebacker, which I think we do need to step up our inside linebacker position. I know that Bobby Okereke looks, really good. And Michael McFadden looks very good from time to time, but he's not consistent. He doesn't wrap up enough. He misses a lot of tackles. For my money, he's someone who you wouldn't want to be the guy on the inside. If he was like the second or third, he is the second. If he was the third option at inside linebacker, sure, to give your starter some rest from time to time. But he's not someone that I want getting 1,000 snaps. Couple of other positions that I'm not necessarily expecting us to draft early at all, but look really good. Tight end Elijah Arroyo from Miami is a beast. I mean, I know we just drafted Theo Johnson last year, who was a similar beast. So maybe we don't need 2 of those, but having, really good football players is never a bad thing. If we were to go into the field with both of them at tight end, and the game is still close, meaning we don't have to throw deep and throw often, but we could just march down the field, having each of them on one side of the field and then Malik Neighbors out wide to one side. That's going to put a lot of pressure and a lot of stress on the defensive backfield. I would be happy to have that as our 2 tight ends. Xavier Strepo, who I love as a slot receiver, I think he is a better Wan'Dale Robinson, especially if we draft Cam Ward, who has thrown to both of them, obviously, this year because they all came from Miami. That would be an amazing pickup because the man gets open, he doesn't drop the ball. Period. He gets open and he doesn't drop the ball. He even threw a key block on that first opening drive touchdown in the Senior Bowl on the halfback option play. So not to say he's going to do a whole lot of blocking, but he isn't afraid to block. He stuck his head in there and gave that running back time to make that throw downfield. Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, from the 2 wide receivers from Iowa State, a lot of people were talking up. They did, in fact, have a good week and a good game. And, late round additions, if we're still looking for a wide receiver in the late 5th, 6th, 7th round, I don't think they're going to last quite that long. They might last in the 5th round. They wouldn't be terrible ads. So that's my take on the Senior Bowl. We already talked about the Shrine Bowl, and the next thing up is the Combine. So we're going to be talking about the Combine quite a bit in the coming days and weeks. So get ready for that. But for right now, I just wanted to see what you guys think about my takeaways from the Senior Bowl. Anybody I missed, anybody you thought did better than some of the people I mentioned, or maybe someone I mentioned that you didn't love, and you saw some things you didn't like about them. So drop us a comment, a like, a share, a subscribe, all those good things. But for now, Clay from Brooklyn, Football with the Fellas, all about Big Blue. I'm out.
Big shout out to El Marquis Productions, the talent behind the music and production here at Football with the Fellas. It's all about Big Blue. Their beats bring energy and excitement to every episode. El Marquis' skills in mixing, mastering, and creating top quality sound make the podcast come alive each week. For your own projects, check out elmarquisproductions.com and take your sound to the next level.